Clemson record predictions. Now, this was very interesting how we ran up against this. You know, we'll get into more in depth on the schedule, but I did want to just go ahead and show everybody exactly what we had as far as record predictions for these bad boys. Are you guys ready? Are you guys prepared to see this? So here was the breakdown of everybody's records and who the losses were going to be.
Dante, I love that. I love that you had App State there.
Yeah, man. I went back and forth with this one. I mean, I had a 10-2 record for a long time, and then I fell to a 9-3. And then you know what? I got swayed a little bit by doing some research on Appalachian State, because we are going to be talking about the Sun Belt today. So it was just unfortunate that Clemson got mentioned in the same week as this. So I don't blame anybody but the voters on this one. But as you see, all the names of every single member in ECG, then a roll up at the bottom was just whatever the most popular picks were, which were Georgia and Florida. So the two that had 10-2 records were Sora, and you know, we rolled it up as the ECG as a whole. It's got 10-2. So you either could take our individual ones, but I think the ones that we need to be judged at by the end of the day is the ECG record prediction. So that's what we'll look at and reflect on, you know, later this year. Now, since Sora, you had the best record here, explain, sir.
No, I'm good. No, it's, you know, it is a very different roster because Clemson just lost so much defensively. You know, not new quarterback, but starting off week 1 at Georgia is just not a good sign for that. But the part of the reason why I didn't have like App State as a loss, because again, when we get into the Sun Belt, and we'll talk about them later, was it does just happen to help that depending on how badly they get beat by Georgia, if they do, but I think they will, all that stuff. It's the first home game. That does do a little something for you. Then, I mean, the rest of their schedule is pretty easy. NC State at Clemson, Stanford at Clemson. Again, the toughest challenges are Georgia and Florida State. And for that, they're Clemson's away for those games. So that doesn't really help when you're going into two very hostile environments against two, top 10, top 5 teams.
Yep.
I believe Georgia's on a neutral site.
Is Georgia on a neutral site?
Yeah, it's in Atlanta.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Atlanta.
Yeah,
it might as well.
It's pretty much a home game for Georgia.
They could be playing in the Athens County Jail, and it would be a home game for Georgia. So
not wrong about that.
But and then pretty much after that, it's just kind of easy breezy. Wake Forest is not, what it used to be. Virginia, Louisville, Virginia Tech, Pittsburgh, and then Citadel. And then at the end, the normal South Carolina Clemson rivalry. I mean, their schedule, they should have a 10-2. If they have anything less like a 9-3, I can accept.
Yeah.
But like at 8-4, that's where you kind of have to start looking at Dabo, especially with how he has not adapted at all. And I do think the pressure is on Dabo a little bit. So that is partially the reason why I have it on 10-2. They have an easy schedule. Their two toughest opponents, unfortunately, are away games or on a neutral site, but still, away. And just, again, I think there is some pressure on Dabo. So, yeah, that's pretty much why I got them at 10-2.
8-4 for me. I think this is going to be pretty rough for them. Not saying that they couldn't end up in the ACC championship at the end of it, because I think that when I look at the ACC schedule overall, I see, most teams having 3 losses inside the conference. So Clemson has a chance to make it to an ACC championship as an 8-4 record. I just want that to be known, because look, they lose against the SEC and then Sun Belt opponent and then just 2 ACC opponents, which they can meet back up with. I mean, the popular one is Florida State, and we'll get to the ACC later on, but I'm a big believer of 𝗕𝘂𝘀𝗶𝘀𝗀𝘀. Like, I think he's going to take a significant step up this year versus the weapons that he does have. That he does have. Will Shipley leaving is obviously a big hole for them, and I just hope that 𝗕𝘂𝘀𝘀𝘀𝘀 can stay healthy enough. I mean, he did have 900 yards last year and 13 touchdowns, but I just hope that he stays healthy enough to help them through. Losing Bull Collins to Notre Dame was kind of a big blow for them because he is a very talented wide receiver. But between him and Tyler Brown last year, they only had like 500 yards. So I really think that Jake Brenningstool is a great tight end. And I think he's going to be one of those tight ends at the end. Y'all know how I feel about tight ends, man. Pause if necessary. But
hey, yo.
But I think Brenningstool is going to be the heart and soul of this team this year, to be completely honest with you, as far as the passing game is concerned. Now, a lot of people might feel differently, but that's just how I feel now. And then their defense, they've been significantly taking hits year after year after year. And I think that's where I feel like that they're going to be let down. Now going into Appalachian State, the only reason why I give them a loss here, and I'm not going to be long-winded about this, you have to go play Georgia in Georgia. And then the next time you play a game is against Appalachian State right before a bye week. After you just got, I don't even think that game's going to be close. Does anybody think that Georgia game is going to be less than 3 scores against Clemson? I think it's going to be by at least 3 touchdowns.
It'll be more than 2, in my opinion. I could see in the like 17, 20 point range, but it's going to be at least be by 14 points.
I don't know. I have a feeling it's going to be another, not snoozer, but another rematch of the last time it was on a neutral site of week 1 of that 10-3 with 𝗎𝘂𝘂𝗀𝗎𝗓's first start.
Yeah.
I feel like both teams, obviously, it's week 1. They haven't really faced anybody except each other. And you can, say what you want about it being Georgia, how they went back to back and then, only had 1 loss in the past 3 years. But it's still completely different. You've lost a lot of guys on that team, some to the draft, some to jail. So it's a completely different team on both sides. I think it's just going to be a very slow game for both teams.
Yeah, I know Appalachian State plays ETSU as their first game, and they're going to beat the dog crap out of them. And I'm a true believer of like,
Do
what?
Oh, never mind.
So I'm always a big believer of like teams that beat the dog crap of another team and then go into a big game is better than a team like Clemson who's going to get the dog crap beat out of them by a good team and then go against a team that has the momentum, being ready to play Clemson on a win versus a loss. Like, you could be influenced by a good win, and you could be influenced by a close loss or a bad loss too. But I think this is more dangerous in the situation of, Appalachian State has been a really good team for a lot of years. And shout out to Joey Aguilar, you know what I'm saying? Like, I think that he's going to be pretty good. I'm biased, but no, I'm just kidding.
Wow, you heard it here first, folks.
No, I think Joey Aguilar is going to be able to get them over the hump. Then we talk about NC State, them losing to them. Concepcion is going to be one of the best wide receivers this year that nobody talks about. And then I think Grayson McCall, not only graduating, but being there at NC State, he's got no distractions. He's got 0 distractions now. He didn't really go that far. He just went right up the coast to Raleigh from Coastal Carolina. And he's playing for a better team. Like, it's kind of like when I asked Dylan Lobby at the Senior Bowl when he played in New Hampshire, right? I said, how does it feel? Obviously you're playing with other guys. Is the speed of the game change? And he said, well, you're also playing with better players at this level too, which makes it seem a little easier on the other side of that. So, you had to think that probably for Grayson McCall and then having an exceptional wide receiver and a great coach at NC State. I just think that I don't think it's a trap game, but I think people are underselling how good that NC State can be. And their defense has been fabulous over the last couple of years too, like flying under the radar. Florida State, I think, is actually going to be a close game. I don't know how I feel about my team this year. I just don't. I could see Clemson winning this, and let's say if we had to play 10 times, I could see Florida State winning 6 out of 10 times against Clemson. But 𝗎𝘂𝘂𝘂𝗀𝗎𝗓 is the biggest question mark. Can he put it all together? And then also, sometimes when you want to get revenge against teams, it doesn't necessarily work out in your favor either. So, you look at it like that. But I do see, Khalil, I'm going to let you get into yours because you do have one team that's interesting that I was like, back and forth with, which was Virginia Tech.
Yeah. This one, Clemson was a hard team to predict for a couple reasons. First of all, like Sora mentioned, they lose a lot of defensive talent, and on offense, they've been stagnant, quite frankly, ever since Trevor Lawrence left. I mean, even when Lawrence was in town and got COVID, 𝗕𝘂𝘂𝘀𝗶𝘲𝗀𝗀 looked really solid when he started against Notre Dame and when he played in relief.
That's the best game of his career so far.
Yeah, but it was as soon as
it was
Lawrence
better than Trevor Lawrence.
graduated.
Any of his performances that year, it was crazy.
Yeah, I mean, people thought he was like legit, and like Clemson had a star on their hands. But then when you look at it,
like Dante and I have gone through the trenches with this man.
I said Clemson and him was going to win the Heisman, and they were going to win the national championship. Don't at me.
He gave everyone great reason to think that, right? Like the proof for me, if the proof is in the pudding, I'm buying it, right? And he gave you reason to buy it. The thing is, as soon as Lawrence went to the NFL and 𝗕𝘂𝘂𝘀𝗶𝘂𝘀𝗀 became the full-time starter, ever since then, whether it was him or 𝗕𝘂𝘂𝘀𝗀𝘀𝗀𝗀, who was also a former 5-star, you look at the offense under either one of them, and it just hasn't been nearly as productive on that side of the ball. So I look at the schedule, and I think there's 5 games they could realistically lose. If you sat here and told me that they lost to Georgia, Florida State, NC State, Louisville, and Virginia Tech, I wouldn't question it and be like, oh, well, that's a lot of losses in one season, but I kind of buy it, right? Like I could see them losing those games. I don't think they lose all 5 this season. Obviously, I only had them losing 3, but those games are all games that they could lose unless they see a massive offensive turnaround. Georgia, I mean, I think they're going to get it handed to them. I don't think it's going to be ugly, but I don't think it's going to be particularly close. Florida State, I think, is going to be the close game. I think that one's going to be a like neck and neck. I know it's like it's in Tallahassee, but for me, I think that 𝗕𝘂𝘂𝘂𝘀𝘂𝘀𝗀𝘂 is going to actually put this team like on his back, and he's going to will them to a win, which is going to be ironic playing against Clemson. But I just see this as a game where he's going to be able to do enough to win the game. I don't know if it's going to be like, 400 yards and 4 touchdowns. It might be like 200 yards and like 2 touchdowns and an interception, but he's going to do just enough to win that game. NC State, that was one I think it's a coin flip in my opinion. NC State, with the talent they have, a very underrated talent. You mentioned 𝗕𝘂𝘂𝘂𝘂𝘂𝘂𝘂𝑀 he was the best true freshman wide receiver in college football this past year, in my opinion. And he's
like 1,300 yards or something like that. It was insane.
I mean, he was incredible. So he's going to be a mainstay. And now you move from who was our quarterback last year? It wasn't Devin Leary because he went to Kentucky.
No, it was Brendan Armstrong.
Yes, Brendan Armstrong, who came in from Virginia. Mm-hmm. You go from him to Grayson McCall. I thought Brendan Armstrong was all right, but Grayson McCall has done more with a lot less. Granted, against lesser competition.
Well,
but I think that's
what Brendan lacked in arm talent, Grayson McCall has.
Yeah,
and then that's how I looked at it.
Yeah, and McCall, Armstrong was more of like a dual threat kind of guy, I believe, at Virginia. That's kind of what his thing. But I mean, McCall, he's mobile, but I think that it's going to be overall that offense is going to be sneaky good. Then you look at Louisville, who is the next team of those 5 that they play. They play them at home, and I think this is going to be a defensive slugfest as well. Louisville just, again, I could see it going either way, but I don't think they'll have enough offensive firepower to beat a Clemson defense that's going to have, like 7 games under its belt. And coming off of a bye week. Like Clemson has a bye week right before they play Louisville. So I think Clemson will win that one.
Bye weeks are weird too. 2 games into the season and 5, and then they got to play another 5 on the rest of the year. It's crazy. It's nasty work.
Yeah. That one, again, I could see it going either way, but I do think Clemson wins in a low scoring. I think both teams score, potentially under 20 points. But this one right here, Virginia Tech, is one that I feel pretty confident in. And first of all, it's in Blacksburg, right? Like Virginia Tech is at home, so they got that advantage.
That's going to be a night game for sure. It has to be.
Yeah, I mean, I could see it getting College game day. I don't know who else plays that week, but just looking at the matchup itself, I think that's going to be one of the better matchups that week. And Kyron Drones, who I'm a fan of personally, like I think that he could be a difference maker here, because there are very few quarterbacks in the country who last year showed that he could do what he did through the air, well, mostly on the ground, but if he takes steps right in his passing, he protected the football. That was my biggest thing. He only threw 3 interceptions. If you only throw 3 interceptions as a starting quarterback, as a Power 5 program, and he only tossed for 2,000 yards, but that's good that you had over a 5-to-1 interception or touchdown interception ratio. He protects the football. That's my kind of quarterback. The big thing for me too is they only lost 12 total players from their entire roster last year. They returned all 11 starters on offense and 10 on defense. This is going to be it is one of the most experienced teams in the country. They're at home against Clemson with a dynamic quarterback. I see this one as it's probably going to be deemed an upset, but I think Virginia Tech's going to win this one, and it's not going to be like they eke this one out. I think that they could win by double digits.
That's a good point, though, because I'm looking at they play in week 10, right? So, I mean, it depends on what Oregon and Michigan does, because they got them on the schedule. And then the only other game that I can see that would trump this one is Ohio State and Penn State. Depends how both of those teams do.
Right.
And then, Florida and Georgia, but I'm not sure how good Florida's going to be up until when they play Georgia. And then what could be a sneaky one could be Ole Miss and Arkansas.
Yeah.
A sneaky one could be Kentucky and Tennessee, USC and Washington. So they got to compete against a couple other teams, but I wouldn't say outside of Oregon, Michigan, and Penn State, Ohio State, I don't see that there's any other games there that would totally trump them not being the game of the week.
Virginia Tech could be ranked at this point. They have Vanderbilt, Marshall, Old Dominion, Rutgers, Miami, Stanford, Boston College, Georgia Tech, Syracuse.
Mm-hmm.
It's a pretty light schedule, and I mean, yeah, when you're quarterback, you take out the sack yardage, he rushed for over 1,000 yards, and he protects the football, and that was, I believe it was his first year there. Correct me if I'm wrong, but after he transferred from Baylor, it's just everything that you look for an upset, it's there. Experienced and dangerous quarterback, very experienced roster, and I mean a team that could be on a winning streak at home in a hostile environment. Yeah, I think Virginia Tech could win this one. I think they could win by 2 scores. So
facts. 𝗕𝘂𝘀𝗶𝗲𝗀, what's up, man? He says, hi, Dante and family. Appreciate you being here.
hello,
yeah, just looking at the rest of these, Hayden agrees that he's kind of a combination of me and you, Khalid, with Virginia Tech and NC State. And then 2 that
NC State isn't, because of Don's point, it's been a long time since NC State's won at Clemson.
Yeah, but they're one of those teams that are known to upset other teams, too.
Yeah. Clemson's won the last 9 times that they've hosted.
And Devin Leary was probably the best quarterback that came from there until he got hurt. And in my opinion, Grayson McCall is a 3-time Sun Belt Player of the Year. Had a downward trend last year, but that whole team did.
Mm-hmm.
It's just one of those. It's one of those where you got to think, because revenge games do, but not revenge games, but former players going against their former schools, it does add some juice. It just depends on how much really that helps. Whether you want to have that be the say all be all thing, I mean, that does add extra juice to some certain players.
Mm-hmm.
Also, I'll add about NC State. Clemson hasn't lost in back-to-back years to NC State since 2002 and 2003. So it's been a long time since that's happened. Now, of course, eventually, right, that streak is going to be broken. Is this year the year? Is this year the year? I don't know, but I wouldn't be surprised.
I wouldn't be surprised either. Louisville is on there for Don and Tony, which is interesting. because
that one's
I don't think they're
interesting.
going to have the offensive firepower. I think their defense is still going to be good, but
Yeah.
this will be a good measuring stick year for them to see how good. Why am I drawing a blank on their coach's name right now?
Jeff Brom.
Jeff Brom. How good Jeff Brom is as a coach, because he's had a couple pieces there that have kind of, had a really good backfield with Jawar Jordan and Isaac Gurindo. And what's his name was there last year, wide receiver. Not Jacob
Jamari Thrash.
Jamari Thrash. Yep. So
And they had Colin Lacey from South Alabama. I think he's a dog. Like, I really wanted him to commit to A&M, but I still don't know if adding one receiver is gonna push them over that edge to beat a team like Clemson this year. Like, Louisville was great run last year. I don't know if they'll be able to replicate it.
Yeah, I don't know either. So, I mean, respectable. I mean, I was the harshest on them. I just think that Appalachian State game is just the wrong place at the wrong time, even though Clemson's playing at home. And I think they've just been overlooked. But if I did have to take one team off of this to bring it to 9-3 just to be with the masses, it would probably be that one. But I think for surely Georgia, NC State, and Florida State win their games. Even though I think the Florida State game is going to be closer, I just think Mike Norvell is on one, with Florida State, and he's got those guys rolling.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's, what I'm saying? Like, that's where we are, man. Clemson is getting their love.
Oh yeah.